Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the legislature. It's such a pleasure to be here today on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people, the Songhees, and the Kosapsum nations. My name's Jennifer Whiteside. I'm BC's Minister of Labor, and I'm so grateful for everyone who has joined us today for this very exciting announcement about changes to the Employment Standards Act. And I am going to turn it right over to our keynote speaker, Premier David Eby, to make the announcement.
Thanks, Jennifer. It's great to see everybody again. Round two. We do indeed have some very good news about the Employment Standards Act here today. Our province has so much to be proud of. We talked about some of it this morning, the incredible resources of this place. Our geographic positioning facing out to 2/3 of the world's population. But what makes it all possible are the people of British Columbia and making sure that we're supporting the people of the province. The economy is not just spreadsheets and numbers and lines on graphs. It is people. And without the people of this province, we wouldn't go anywhere. So making sure that people are looked after and supported and protected is key to ensuring the success of our province as a whole. And our government's time in office has been marked by ensuring those protections are in place at the workplace. For example, we eliminated the need for sick notes for short-term illnesses. So if you're sick, you don't have to go into work. You got mandatory sick days that are recognized, and your job will be protected while you're away and sick. And they are paid sick days, so you're looked after, and you don't have to bring a doctor's note. We've increased minimum wage every year to ensure that people are supported with cost of living and linked up minimum wage to inflation to ensure that people don't fall behind, especially people at the lowest wage jobs in the province. And we've also improved supports, improved protections for people working in app-based ride-hailing or delivery jobs, for example, making sure that they're looked after as well. And we've seen the results of that. We've seen app-based workers for Uber here join a union. We've seen Starbucks workers and Amazon workers join a union, the ticket to middle class prosperity for them and their families in service jobs. But we know that there's more to do. And one of the areas where we know we have to do better is supporting people with long-term illnesses, chronic conditions, or conditions that don't immediately resolve after a short period of time, illnesses like cancer or multiple sclerosis, to make sure that people are supported, that they don't have to choose between their health and focusing on their health and their family at a time when they're chronically ill and focusing on their job. They're able to just focus on getting better. It supports employers, ensuring they're able to maintain access to their skilled employees and not lose that talent and experience when people are on long-term leave. So I'm proud to say that we have introduced a bill that will ensure that we're looking after people facing those kinds of illnesses, ensuring that their jobs will be protected for the long term. This bill allows up to 27 weeks of unpaid leave if you are facing a catastrophic illness every year. It doesn't all have to be taken in a lump, but it ensures that if you're doing chemotherapy, for example, you're able to take the time that you need off of work and return to your job. It will go into effect later this fall if passed and ensure that workers are looked after. It's hard to imagine anything more challenging or awful than facing a diagnosis of a major and catastrophic health issue like this. But knowing that your job will be there when you're completing treatment, when you're able to return to employment, is just one less thing for people to have to worry about. We're focused on building a better province together, and ensuring that British Columbians are looked after is a key part of that. We've got more to do, but today's announcement is a big step in the right direction. And I'd like to pass it back to the Minister of Labor and thank her and her team for advancing this important legislation in British Columbia.
Thank you so much, Premier. This announcement today really is the result of shared work that we have undertaken with healthcare advocates, with employer groups, with worker groups, and some of those healthcare groups are here today. And you'll be hearing shortly from Andrea Seal, who is the CEO of the Canadian Cancer Society. You'll also be hearing from Sue Whitaker, who is with the Multiple Sclerosis Society in BC. And we're also joined today in the audience by Dr. Christina Friedenreich, who is a member of the board of the Canadian Cancer Society and also a cancer researcher, as well as Elena Durasik-Luton, who is the executive director of the Multiple Sclerosis Society. And I just wanted to add that there is no question, as the Premier outlined, that workers are the center of the economy that we want to build in this province. And this change that we are making to the Employment Standards Act is something that patient advocate groups have been talking about for a long time. And this spring, we heard from British Columbians like Sherry, who traveled down from Fort St. John to share with me her experience of living with multiple sclerosis. We heard from Bailey and Kathy, both of whom are cancer survivors, who shared with me and many of my MLA colleagues their experiences and who advocate passionately for better job protections for people dealing with serious health diagnoses. And it's really their stories and their advocacy that articulates the need for workers to have the time to undergo medical treatment and to recover from their illness and injuries. There are currently no provisions under our Employment Standards Act that protect the jobs for workers who are unable to work due to their own long-term illness or injury. And I want to emphasize that I truly believe that most employers in BC are already doing this work. But workers who experience long-term disability or illness have protections under the Human Rights Code, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability. This proposed change will ensure that that protection is built into the Employment Standards Act. And you know, for people facing a difficult diagnosis and maybe, a life-altering situation, whether it's short-term or long-term, the certainty of knowing that their job will be there for them provides relief. It alleviates an unnecessary burden on their journey to recovery. And in British Columbia, with more than 31,000 people diagnosed with cancer each year, with over 11,000 people in British Columbia living with multiple sclerosis, as well as people living with other chronic illnesses, it's vital that we provide this important assurance to workers and their families. And I would say this includes as well survivors of intimate partner violence, mostly women and gender diverse people, for whom up to 92% have signs and symptoms of traumatic brain injury. And we know that 90% of intimate partner violence cases reported to police involve survivors ages 15 to 54 in their prime working years. And for them, the guarantee of job protection may help invite survivors to feel safe in seeking services for their recovery. The amendment we're introducing today will bring British Columbia's protections up to the standard that is already in place in other jurisdictions in Canada, such as Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland and Labrador, and federally regulated industries and workplaces. These changes are expected to come into effect later this fall, once passed by the legislature and upon receiving royal assent. And lastly, I just really want to thank all of the business and industry and employer associations who spent time talking with us about this and consulting on this change. The Retail Council of Canada, the Tourism Industry Association of BC, the BC Hotel Association, Restaurants Canada, the Association of Business Improvement Areas, the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade, the Business Council of BC, and more. We also heard from patient groups, advocacy groups, as well as union groups and the BC Federation of Labor. And I think across that whole spectrum, there is really a shared recognition of the importance of supporting people at work when they are suffering from a life-altering diagnosis, and broad agreement that workers deserve to be able to return to their jobs once they and their healthcare providers say they are ready. Nobody in BC deserves to lose their work and livelihoods because they've been diagnosed with a serious illness or because they're recovering from a terrible injury or intimate partner violence. And with that, I would like to introduce Andrea Searle from the Canadian Cancer Society to tell us a bit more about the experience of people living with cancer.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. At the Canadian Cancer Society, we fund life-saving cancer research. We provide trusted information and support services for people who are facing cancer, and we advocate for policies and health improvements that change people's lives, like this one will. It's an honor to be here to mark this important protection for British Columbians who are facing cancer and other serious illnesses. Here in British Columbia, I'm sorry to share that more than 30,000 people are diagnosed with cancer each year. And of course, treatment often means that you have to step away from work for a period of time. And you might be surprised to know that 40% of people who are diagnosed with cancer are in those working years. What does cancer mean to your job? While most employers are compassionate and supportive when someone faces cancer, that's not always the case. People can feel pressure to keep working when they're very sick. They can feel pressure to hide their illness. Some are fired and too exhausted to take it up as a human rights complaint. So this will protect them going forward. The financial hardships that come with a cancer diagnosis are often unexpected. Income loss and out-of-pocket costs of cancer that can include things that just aren't covered, things like medications, hospital parking, home care, that can all add up. And in fact, we know from our research that it adds up to an average cost of $33,000 over the lifetime of each person who's diagnosed with cancer. So it's a terrible financial hit. But the worries go beyond money alone. Cancer creates so much fear and uncertainty about your ongoing ability to support your family in the future, support yourself, and even understand what your future might hold. So this is why today's announcement matters so much. By extending job-protected leave to 27 weeks, which is just over 6 months, BC government is giving people with cancer some certainty that they'll have time to focus on their health and their recovery. And it means that someone who's undergoing treatment, for example, for breast cancer or colon cancer, where recovery typically takes between 26 and 37 weeks, they have the time to heal without feeling that pressure to return to work or without worrying that they will lose their job. And as the minister said, this brings British Columbia in line with the federal EI sickness benefit, which provides the income during that period so that employers are not penalized. And now we're matching other provinces across the country who have recently made similar commitments. And it's a real mark of fairness and compassion and certainty for patients and families and their caregivers. And it's taken many people working together to come to this place and study the issue, study the impact, and listen to people who are living with serious illness. We say it takes a society to take on cancer, and this is a great moment of coming together. Patients and caregivers have really been leading the way, and we've been supporting, the federal government has been supporting, and provinces as well. Everyone's collaborating to create job protection for those who need it. So we're extremely grateful. We would like to thank Premier Eby, thank you, Minister Whiteside, and all of the MLAs who have been acting together on this issue. People with cancer and serious illnesses, thank you. I think cancer affects all of us, and I hope that all BC MLAs will be able to support this great development. Thank you.
Andrea, thank you. Thank you so much for those words, and really thank you to the Canadian Cancer Society for everything that your team does, that your board members do, that volunteers do to advocate for and to highlight the challenges for people who are living with cancer. I'd now like to welcome Sue Whitaker, a volunteer and ambassador with MS Canada, to share some remarks.
It is an honor to be here with you this afternoon. I'm grateful to Minister Whiteside for inviting me to make some brief remarks about job-protected leave. The introduction of this legislation is an important milestone for workers in British Columbia. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, or MS, in 1996 at the age of 37. At that time, I was a kindergarten teacher who loved every minute with those young learners. Then I was diagnosed with MS, news that would test my resilience. For about 6 months prior, I had been experiencing little stumbles when I walked, as if I had a pebble underfoot, and then eventually it began to feel as if my left leg was literally becoming longer than my right. After having some tests and 2 MRIs, I received my diagnosis. What I had been experiencing was foot drop, a common symptom of MS due to lesions on my brain. As my disease progressed, I had to leave my job as a kindergarten teacher. It had been a big part of my identity for 22 years. It was a big change. Who would I be now? And one that brought sadness and frustration. It's known that more than 60% of people living with MS eventually reach unemployment. The unpredictable and episodic, yet progressive nature of MS often leads to reduced employment and eventually a premature exit from the workforce. Introducing 27 weeks of job-protected medical leave will offer protection for workers in our province so they don't have to make the tough choice, like I did, to leave a job they love. Thank you for the opportunity to share a bit of my story on this very important day.
Thank you so much, Sue, for everything that you do to advocate for people living with multiple sclerosis, and thank you to MS Canada for everything they do. And thank you all for being here today. We're very proud to stand up with working people in British Columbia today, tomorrow, and always.